Your return flight's canceled. Figure it out yourself. The words appeared at 2:47 p.m. while I was standing in front of 200 infrastructure professionals, mid-sentence, explaining why the Louisville water main project had a 67% chance of collapsing despite every assurance the contractor had given us. The projection behind me showed my risk correlation matrix, the same one that had saved our division $4.3 million last year by catching fatal flaws before anyone signed contracts. My phone was sitting on the podium, and I watched those words crawl onto the lock screen while voices around the room waited for me to continue explaining why bedrock composition mattered in timeline projections. I found her in the third row. She wore that expression I had memorized by now, the one I first saw when she moved my workspace to the basement with no windows. Then again when she presented the Jefferson Street analysis to the city council without mentioning my name anywhere in the 40-slide presentation that won her a formal commendation. She was not trying to hide it. The satisfaction was right there on her face, open and deliberate. My phone buzzed again. Conference hotels are expensive. Hope you budgeted appropriately. 2,000 miles from home. Return flight deleted. No warning. While I stood on a stage representing work she had never understood but claimed as her own for 23 months straight. I closed my laptop. The room went quiet. I apologize, but I need to step away. The handouts have the complete methodology. Then I walked out, past 200 confused professionals, past her smile, straight through the double doors into the hotel corridor, where the air felt different than it had when I walked in. What she did not know was that I had been preparing for this moment, or something like it, for 6 months. Not because I expected her to cancel my flight, because I had learned exactly who she was, what she was capable of, and how fragile her power actually turned out to be when someone looked closely. Before I continue, I want to thank you for being here and listening to this, because what happened next would not make sense without understanding how deeply someone can bury your work while standing on top of it. If this resonates with you, or if you have ever felt invisible while someone else took credit for what you built, please tap that subscribe button. Your support means everything. My name is Senna, 28 years old when this happened. Background in civil engineering and statistical modeling, which sounds impressive until you realize it means I spend most of my time calculating whether concrete will cure properly in autumn temperatures, or if a contractor's crew size matches their timeline claims. The job posting called it Municipal Risk Analyst, entry level, which translated to run the numbers and tell us which contractors will fail, so the city doesn't waste millions on bridges that collapse or water systems that flood. I took it after 3 years at a startup that imploded slowly, then all at once, leaving me with 2 months of bounced paychecks and a deep need for something stable and boring. Municipal bureaucracy seemed perfect. Show up, analyze proposals, go home. No drama, no chaos, just math and material science. The woman who interviewed me seemed reasonable at first. Her name was Linda Harrison, department head with 15 years of city relationships. And during that interview, she asked decent questions about my engineering background and whether I understood statistical modeling beyond basic probability. I thought she understood the work. I thought we would collaborate. First week, she handed me a bridge proposal and said, "Just run the numbers. Let me know if anything stands out." I spent 4 days on it. The contractor assumed concrete would cure in conditions that violated basic material science. Their cost estimates ignored bedrock composition documented in the Geological Survey. I wrote 12 pages explaining why the project would run 40% over budget and fail inspection before completion. Linda read it, called me into her workspace, and said, "This is excellent work, really excellent. Mind if I present it to the city council? You're still ramping up, might be better if it comes from me this time." I was new. She was the department head. It seemed reasonable. It seemed like mentorship. She presented every word as her own assessment. The council rejected the proposal based on her presentation. The second contractor completed the project on time, under budget. Linda got mentioned in the city manager's quarterly review for her thorough risk analysis. I got nothing, not even a footnote. I told myself it was fine. I was learning the system, learning how city politics worked, learning patience. Then it happened again, and again, and again. The pattern became clear over months. I would spend weeks modeling risk factors for water, treatment facilities, library renovations, stormwater drainage systems. I would write detailed assessments explaining not just whether a project would fail, but exactly how the failure would cascade through timelines and budgets and regulatory compliance. Linda would read them, compliment my thoroughness, then present them in meetings I was never invited to attend. But something else started happening that Linda did not anticipate. The city engineers began calling me directly. Not officially, just quick questions about proposals. They would ask about concrete specifications, soil stability calculations, whether a contractor's numbers actually matched physical reality. I answered honestly, showed my work. When I did not know something, I said so, and found out. One afternoon, a senior civil engineer named Tom called about a stormwater project. Linda says this contractor's fine, but something feels wrong about their drainage calculations. You worked on this, right? I did the initial assessment, I said. What did you actually think? I pulled up my notes. Their gradient calculations assume uniform soil composition. The geological survey shows a clay layer at 3.2 meters that will create a water barrier. They are going to have flooding issues within 2 years. Long silence. Then Tom said, "That's not what Linda told the council." What did she tell them? That the proposal was solid, low risk. My hands went still on the keyboard. Tom, I wrote a 14-page assessment flagging exactly that drainage issue. I recommended rejection. I never saw that. Linda presented a 2-page summary saying it was approvable with minor modifications. I started checking after that call, reached out to other city officials on projects I had assessed. Same pattern every time. Linda was presenting simplified versions of my work that often contradicted my actual conclusions. When I recommended rejection, she watered it down to approvable with modifications. When I flagged major timeline risks, she called them minor concerns. She was not just taking credit, she was actively misrepresenting my technical findings to make herself look collaborative and reasonable to contractors. I could not confront her directly. I was still entry level. She had 15 years of city relationships and bureaucratic protection. Direct confrontation would destroy me faster than it touched her. So I did something different. I became excessively helpful to everyone who called, every city official who wanted technical clarification. I walked them through my analysis in detail. Every contractor who wanted to understand why their proposal failed, I explained exactly which assumptions did not hold up under scrutiny. I was building something Linda could not see, could not control, and would not understand until it was too late. I documented everything. Every analysis I wrote, I kept the original with timestamps. Every conversation with city officials, I followed up with detailed summaries sent via work email. I was creating a paper trail that showed who actually understood the technical work and who was just performing expertise. 18 months into the job, Linda called me into her workspace and said, "There's a national infrastructure conference in Denver, 3 days. I want you to present our division's risk methodology." I stared at her. Linda had never let me present anything publicly. She guarded visibility like it was currency. "You want me to present? Your analysis work. Show them how we evaluate proposals. It's good exposure for the division." I should have been suspicious. But I was tired of being invisible. I would be happy to. Great. I will handle the arrangements. The conference was massive. City officials and contractors from 40 states, billions in future infrastructure projects would be discussed there. This was where relationships formed, where divisions built reputations that led to major contract opportunities. Linda registered us both, booked flights and hotels. Then 2 days before departure, she announced a family emergency. Could not attend. I would represent the division alone. "This is your chance to shine," she said. "Make us look good." I spent the entire flight preparing. My presentation covered our complete methodology using real examples from projects I had assessed. Technical details that contractors could actually use to improve their proposals. I included the Morrison Bridge timeline flaws, the concrete curing analysis, why material science matters in risk assessment. It was thorough, honest, and useful. The presentation was scheduled for day 1, 2 p.m., medium-sized conference room. I saw Tom in the 5th row, a few other city officials I recognized, mostly contractors and municipal analysts I had never met. I made it through 17 slides, showed how we identified the Morrison Bridge problems, explained the mathematical framework behind timeline risk modeling. My voice was steady. The room was engaged. This was the most visible I had been in 2 years. That is when the text arrived. Your return flight's canceled. Figure it out yourself. I stopped talking mid-sentence. Found Linda in the third row. She was smiling. Then the second message. Conference hotels are expensive. Hope you budgeted appropriately. She had sent me here to fail. To present technical work she did not understand. Then cut my support so I would be stranded, humiliated, desperate. Maybe I would panic. Maybe I would beg. Maybe I would finally learn my place. I closed my laptop without explaining. Said I needed to step away. The handouts had the complete methodology. Then I walked out. I found James Morrison in the hotel lobby 20 minutes later. He was Senior VP for Municipal Contracting at a regional oversight organization, the body that certified which divisions were qualified to bid on major city projects. I had noticed him watching my presentation from the back of the room before I left. That was an unexpected exit, he said. My manager just canceled my flight home while I was on stage. I need to tell you something. We sat in uncomfortable lobby chairs that smelled like industrial cleaner. I told him everything. Not emotionally, clinically. Here is how Linda presents my work. Here is what my actual assessments say. Here is the documentation I have kept for 6 months because I knew something like this was coming. Why didn't you report this before? James asked. To who? She's my manager. It's a municipal bureaucracy. I would look like a disgruntled employee making excuses. So why tell me now? Because she didn't just steal my work. She sent me here to present technical analysis she doesn't understand, then cut my legs out from under me for entertainment. I'm done protecting her reputation. James was quiet for a long moment. Can you prove the work is yours? I opened my laptop, showed him original assessment files with timestamps, email chains with city officials where I explained technical details, the stormwater drainage calculations that contradicted what Linda had told the council, calculations that later proved accurate when the project flooded exactly as I predicted. He read through everything without speaking. Finally, he looked up and said, "This is fraud. She's misrepresenting division capabilities to city governments." I know. What do you want from me? I had been thinking about this during my walk from the conference room. Nothing right now, but I want you to remember this conversation. I think it's going to become relevant soon. He handed me his card. Stay in touch. I could not afford to change my flight. Linda had booked the cheapest fare, no modifications allowed. The conference hotel cost $280 per night, more than my car payment. I called Tom and asked if anyone had a spare couch. He laughed. I'm sharing a room with 2 other city engineers. But yeah, one of them bailed. You can have the extra bed. Tom's roommate was David Park from Seattle's infrastructure division. We stayed up past midnight talking about risk modeling, comparing methodologies across cities. I showed them my actual assessments, the ones Linda had modified before presentation. David said, "This is significantly more rigorous than what most divisions produce. Why isn't your name on any of this?" "Because my manager presents it as her work." Tom shook his head. "We've been making multi-million-dollar decisions based on what we thought was Linda's expertise. But it's yours." "I know. You should go independent," David said. "Consulting. Cities would hire you directly. I don't have the credentials. I'm entry-level. You have 2 years of accurate risk assessments that saved cities millions. That's better than credentials." The idea planted itself deep. I took a bus to the airport when the conference ended, slept on terminal chairs waiting for standby seats, got home, 32 hours after my presentation, exhausted and furious and strangely calm. Linda had moved into my workspace while I was gone. My actual furniture was replaced with hers. My files were in boxes in the hallway. She smiled when I walked in. "How was the conference?" "Productive. Good. I'm reorganizing the division. You'll be working from the basement location now. Better for focused analysis work." Translation. Out of sight. No more direct contact with city officials. Buried where I could not build relationships that threatened her control. "Understood," I said. Then I moved my boxes downstairs to the basement workspace, with no windows and lights that buzzed constantly, and I started building my exit in absolute silence. 6 months of preparation meant becoming invisible in a way that made me indispensable. I answered every contractor call. Every city official who needed technical clarification got detailed explanations with follow-up documentation. I was not building. relationships for Linda anymore. I was building them for myself, one honest answer at a time. Every contractor whose proposal got rejected would call asking what went wrong. Most analysts would give vague answers about not meeting requirements. I walked them through my assessment, page by page. Your timeline assumed 6-hour concrete curing. At projected autumn temperatures, you need 8 to 10 hours. That cascades through your entire schedule, creates bottlenecks at the foundation phase, delays everything downstream. They would thank me, ask if I did consulting work. I would say not yet, but I appreciated them thinking of me. The city officials kept calling too, despite Linda's directive that all communication go through her first. They would frame it as needing technical clarification, background context, nothing official, but we all knew what it really was. They trusted my analysis more than they trusted her summaries of my analysis. And I kept documenting everything with obsessive precision. Every assessment, Linda modified. I saved the original with creation timestamps. Every time she presented my work as hers, I noted the date, the meeting, who attended. I was building a case I hoped I would never need but suspected I would. 3 months after the conference, Tom called with news that made my stomach drop. That stormwater project you flagged? The one Linda approved anyway? Yeah, it's flooding. Exactly like you predicted. Clay layer created a water barrier at 3.2 meters. Contractors trying to fix it, but it requires a complete redesign. Cities facing $2.3 million in additional costs. I said nothing for a moment. Then, I'm sorry to hear that. Linda's blaming the contractor. Says they deviated from specifications. Did they? No. I pulled the original proposal. They built exactly what they said they would build. Linda just approved it, despite your assessment warning this would happen. Do you have my original assessment? No, just Linda's summary that said it was low risk with minor concerns. I sent him my 14-page original within 5 minutes. The one that explicitly detailed the clay layer problem, showed the geological survey data, explained exactly why drainage would fail at that depth. The one Linda had condensed into 2 paragraphs that removed all the technical warnings. Tom went quiet after reading it. When he spoke again, his voice sounded different. I'm sharing this with the city manager. That's your decision to make. Senna, this isn't just about credit. Linda misrepresented technical risk. The city made a decision based on false information. That's serious. I know. 2 weeks later, the city manager's office sent a formal request. They wanted all my original assessments for the past 18 months, every project, unmodified versions, complete with my notes and calculations. I sent them everything. 73 assessments, hundreds of pages. Every calculation I had performed, every risk I had identified, every recommendation I had made before Linda simplified it into something easier to approve. Then I waited. The investigation took 6 weeks. I was not part of it, not invited to meetings, not asked for testimony, but Tom kept me informed through careful phone calls, where he chose his words like someone who knew conversations might be documented later. The city had approved 12 major projects in 18 months. I had recommended rejection or significant modification on 7 of them. Linda had overridden 5 of my recommendations. 3 were now experiencing exactly the problems I had predicted: cost overruns, timeline failures, compliance issues that required expensive fixes. The city was facing $8 million in additional costs because Linda had misrepresented technical risk to appear collaborative with contractors. She was building relationships by being reasonable, by approving proposals that made her look easy to work with. She was doing it with my credibility, using my technical work to seem competent while ignoring my actual conclusions. Why would she do that? I asked Tom during one of our careful calls. Because rejecting proposals makes you look difficult, he said. Approving them makes you look like a team player. She was building political capital by spending your technical accuracy, using my work to look competent while ignoring my conclusions. Exactly. The city manager wanted to meet with me. I went in expecting blame. I was the one who had done the assessments. After all, maybe they would say I should have fought harder, escalated louder, refused to let Linda modify my work. Instead, she asked one question. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Because I'm entry level. Linda has 15 years of relationships here. Who would you have believed? She had no answer for that. Neither did I. Really. We both knew the truth. Bureaucracies protect seniority. They trust experience over accuracy until the costs become impossible to ignore. 3 months after I sent those original assessments, something shifted in the industry that Linda never saw coming. James Morrison, the VP I had spoken with at the conference, called me on a Tuesday afternoon. "I've been thinking about our conversation in Denver," he said, "about assessment integrity in municipal contracting. Okay, we're implementing new certification requirements. Every division that wants to bid on major city projects needs certified risk assessors. Not just the division, the actual people doing the analysis." My hand tightened on the phone. "That makes sense. I want you on the certification review board, part-time initially. You would evaluate whether assessors actually understand the work they're claiming credit for. I'm not qualified for that. I'm entry-level. You're the most qualified person I've met. You do actual technical analysis, not political summarization. That's exactly what we need." I took the position, 2 days per month, reviewing assessor certifications. The pay was modest, but it came with something more valuable than money. It came with legitimacy, with a title that said I knew what I was doing, certified by an organization that determined who got to bid on billion-dollar projects. The new certification requirements went into effect 6 months after I joined the review board. Every municipal contracting division in the region had to submit for assessment, not their proposals. Their assessors, the actual people who claimed to perform technical risk analysis. The application asked for credentials, methodology, and sample work. It required documentation of projects assessed, technical frameworks used, calculations performed. It was designed to verify that the person claiming expertise actually possessed it. Linda's division was required to apply like everyone else. She submitted her name as lead assessor, listed herself as primary technical analyst for every major project from the past 2 years. She included examples from my Morrison Bridge analysis, word for word, passages from my stormwater assessment, even sections from my conference presentation, copied directly as evidence of her methodology. Her application landed on my review docket 3 weeks later. I stared at it for a long time. I should have recused myself. Clear conflict of interest. Any reasonable board member would have passed it to a colleague, avoided even the appearance of bias. But James Morrison, the board chair, had a different perspective when I mentioned it to him. "You're the only one who knows the actual history here. We need your assessment. Then we'll have an independent panel verify your findings. This isn't about personal issues. This is about technical competency." I read through Linda's submission that evening. It was impressive if you did not know the work was not hers. The framework was sophisticated. The methodology was thorough. The example calculations were accurate. All of it came from assessments I had written in that basement workspace, while she took credit upstairs. The certification process required an in-person interview, technical demonstration of methodology, live problem solving to prove competency. I scheduled Linda's interview for a Tuesday afternoon, 4 months after her application arrived. She showed up confident, professional attire, prepared materials, leather portfolio that probably cost more than my monthly rent. That same smile, the one that said she had done this for 15 years and knew exactly how these situations worked. James Morrison sat beside me, 2 other board members joined by video conference. Linda did not know James and I had met in Denver. She thought this was procedural, routine, just a formality before approval. "Let's start with the Riverside Development Project," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Your application lists this as an example of your risk assessment methodology. Walk us through how you evaluated timeline risk." She started explaining. "Used my framework perfectly. Contractor track record analysis, material delivery scheduling, weather impact modeling." She had clearly memorized the presentation structure. It sounded credible. "That's the framework," I said. "Now show us the actual calculation. The Riverside project had a concrete foundation phase. How did you model curing time risk?" "Well, we used standard curing tables for the region." "Which tables specifically? What were the temperature assumptions?" Her smile tightened slightly. "I would need to reference the original assessment for those specific values. You wrote the methodology. You shouldn't need references for your own work. I have staff who handle the detailed calculations. I focus on strategic analysis and risk interpretation. But your application claims you performed these assessments personally. You listed yourself as the primary technical assessor, not a supervisor or strategic advisor. I oversee the assessments, provide direction and quality control. I pulled up a document on the shared display. This is the original Riverside assessment, the one your application excerpts. Do you recognize it? Of course. That's my work. Can you explain the concrete curing calculation on page 7? She squinted at the display. I had included my handwritten margin notes, the actual temperature data from the Regional Weather Service, the specific curing compound specifications from the contractor's proposal, the calculations showing why their timeline would fail. This is very detailed technical work, she said carefully. I would need time to review the specific numbers. Linda, this is your methodology. Your application claims you developed it. These are your calculations. Can you explain them or not? I don't appreciate being interrogated. I've been doing this work for 15 years. My track record speaks for itself. James Morrison leaned forward. His voice was calm but firm. We're not questioning your experience. We're verifying technical competency. The certification requires that assessors can demonstrate understanding of their stated methodology. Can you explain the calculation? She could not. She tried to deflect, talk about her relationships with city officials, her history of successful projects. But when pressed on the actual technical work, the mathematics, the material science, the statistical modeling that formed the foundation of risk assessment, she had nothing. She could describe what the work looked like. She could not explain how it actually functioned. The interview lasted 40 minutes. She left angry, portfolio clutched tight, that smile finally gone. I wrote my assessment that evening. Did not embellish, did not add emotional commentary, just documented that Linda Harrison could not demonstrate technical competency in the methodology she claimed to have developed. She could not explain calculations in her submitted work. She could not solve basic risk assessment problems during the interview. Her knowledge appeared superficial, focused on presentation rather than substance. Then I added an appendix with original time-stamped files showing who had actually written the assessments, email records showing my correspondence with city officials, explaining technical details she apparently did not understand, documentation of the stormwater project where she had overridden my recommendation and the city lost $2.3 million. The independent panel reviewed everything, conducted their own interviews with city officials, Tom, David Park, others who had worked with both of us. They confirmed my findings, added their own observations about the discrepancy between Linda's claimed expertise and her demonstrated knowledge. The board's decision came back unanimous. Linda's division failed certification. They could reapply in 18 months after implementing proper assessment protocols and demonstrating genuine technical competency. For the next year and a half, Linda's division could not bid on any major city projects in our region. Billions in potential contracts suddenly closed off, not because of politics or personal grudges, because she could not prove she understood the work she had been claiming credit for since before I arrived. Linda tried to fight the decision. She called in favors with city officials, leveraged her 15 years of relationships, made it clear this was personal targeting by a disgruntled junior analyst. She told people I had sabotaged her out of jealousy, that I was manipulating the system for petty reasons. Those officials called me to ask if it was true. Tom was the first. Is this legitimate? Or is this you getting back at her for the conference? It's legitimate. She failed a technical competency review. The board's full assessment is public record. 3 independent reviewers confirmed the findings. She's saying, you sabotaged her because she moved your workspace. Tom, you've seen my work for 2 years. You've seen her summaries of my work. You've seen what happens when she overrides my recommendations. The stormwater project is still flooding. Is this sabotage, or is this accurate assessment? Long silence on his end. Then, it's accurate, but it's also personal. Can it be both? He exhaled slowly. Yeah, I guess it can. The contractors stopped calling Linda after that. City officials started requesting different contacts when they needed division support. Her professional network, the one she had spent 15 years building through lunches and golf outings and city council meetings, began routing around her like water finding new channels. Her division's revenue dropped 40% in 6 months. Upper management noticed, started asking questions she could not answer convincingly. Why had assessment quality declined? Why were competing divisions winning contracts they used to dominate? Linda blamed me, naturally, said I had undermined her, poisoned her professional relationships, stolen her methodology and credibility. But when management asked her to demonstrate the methodology she claimed I had stolen, she faced the same problem as the certification interview. She could talk about strategy and relationships. She could not explain the actual technical work. 9 months after the failed certification, her division was reorganized, merged into a larger regional group under new leadership. Linda kept her title, Senior Municipal Liaison, but it became ceremonial. No direct reports, no project oversight, no authority. She showed up to meetings, smiled, made comments about maintaining city relationships, but the actual work happened elsewhere, done by people who understood what they were doing. I did not gloat, did not send triumphant emails or make pointed comments at industry events, just focused on building what I actually wanted instead of tearing down what she had left. The certification board position expanded to 3 days per week. I evaluated assessors across multiple states, helped develop technical standards that actually measured competency instead of just experience. I taught methodology workshops where I showed people how to do the work properly, how to identify risks that others missed, how to build analysis that served cities instead of serving careers. The other 4 days, I consulted independently. Cities hired me directly for project feasibility analysis. Contractors paid me to review their proposals before submission, not to game the system, but to genuinely improve their work so it would survive scrutiny. Tom's City hired me to audit their entire project portfolio. David Park brought me to Seattle to train their risk assessment team. I was doing the same work I had always done, running numbers, checking calculations, identifying where projects would fail before anyone wasted money building them. But now, my name was attached, my analysis, my conclusions, my reputation built on work I had actually performed. Linda and I crossed paths occasionally at industry conferences. She would smile, make polite conversation, act like nothing had happened. I was professional, cordial. We both knew the truth underneath the pleasantries. She had tried to erase me by canceling a flight, by burying me in a basement workspace, by taking credit for work she did not understand. Instead, she had freed me from needing her approval or her visibility, and I had dismantled her credibility by doing nothing more than asking her to explain her own claimed expertise. 2 years after the certification failure, something happened that showed me how completely the situation had shifted. A contractor I had worked with early in my consulting practice reached out about a major infrastructure project. I wanted my assessment of his proposal's viability. I reviewed it. Solid work, realistic timelines, appropriate specifications. I gave my approval. One question, he said during our call, who's evaluating this on the city side? I checked the project documentation. The city had hired an outside assessment firm. The lead assessor listed was Linda Harrison. She had gone independent too. Was marketing herself as a senior risk consultant with 15 years of municipal contracting experience. Her website featured case studies from projects I had worked on, quoted passages from my conference presentation, listed methodologies I had developed in that basement workspace while she claimed credit upstairs. The contractor sounded worried. Is that going to be a problem? I heard you two had history. No problem, I said calmly. If your proposal is sound, it will survive any competent review. But is she competent? I chose my words with precision. She has extensive experience in the administrative aspects of municipal contracting. For technical risk assessment, I would recommend having your engineering team prepared to answer detailed questions about calculations and methodology. Make sure you understand your own work well enough to explain it clearly. He understood what I was not saying directly. The proposal went forward. Linda did review it. From what I heard later, she approved it because my assessment was attached as supporting documentation. She was not foolish enough to contradict analysis that had my name and certification attached. She rubber-stamped what I had already verified, collected her fee, added the project to her website as another successful evaluation. The project came in on time, under budget, exactly as my analysis had predicted. The contractor sent me a referral to 3 other cities and a note thanking me for my thorough work. Linda presumably got paid. Added another case study to her portfolio. continued marketing expertise she had learned to fake convincingly enough to survive in a diminished capacity. We were both doing fine, professionally, but the difference was stark. My success was built on calculations I could explain, projects I had genuinely assessed, expertise I had earned through thousands of hours of actual work. Hers was built on borrowed credibility, strategic ambiguity about who did what, and careful avoidance of situations where someone might ask her to show her work. She had taught me something valuable during those 23 months, something I carried into every project, every assessment, every professional relationship I built afterward. Your reputation is either grounded in what you can actually do, or it is built on nothing sustainable. You can fake expertise for a while, especially in bureaucratic systems that reward seniority and relationships over competency. But eventually, someone asks you to prove it, to open your laptop and show the calculations, to explain why you made specific decisions, to demonstrate that you understand the work you claim as your own. And when a moment comes, you either know what you are talking about, or everyone discovers that you never did. I built everything I have now on that principle. Every consulting contract, every certification review, every training workshop. I can explain the work because I did the work. My reputation exists because I earned it, not because I borrowed someone else's and hoped nobody would check. Linda canceled my flight thinking she was stranding me 2,000 miles from home with no resources and no options. What she actually did was force me to have a conversation with James Morrison that I might never have initiated on my own. She pushed me into a hotel room with Tom and David, where we talked honestly about assessment quality and professional independence. She created the circumstances that made me stop protecting her reputation and start building my own. The certification system that destroyed her credibility exists now because she sent me to that conference, because she thought humiliating me would be entertaining, because she could not imagine that the person whose work she had stolen for 2 years might have built relationships based on competency instead of hierarchy. She tried to bury me. Instead, she handed me the tools to expose that she had been standing on a foundation that was never hers. And when the certification board asked her to demonstrate her expertise, that foundation dissolved completely. I see her sometimes at conferences. She still smiles, still networks, still talks about her experience and her city relationships. But everyone in the industry knows now. They know she failed certification. They know why. They know that when someone asks her to explain the technical work, she deflects to strategy and experience and everything except the actual answer. She still gets some consulting work, cities that value relationships over rigor, contractors who want approvals more than accuracy. But the major projects, the ones that matter, the ones where failure costs millions, those come to people who can show their work, who can open their files and explain their calculations, and prove they understand what they are doing. Those projects come to people like me now. She wanted me invisible. She wanted me grateful for any scrap of visibility she chose to grant. She wanted me stranded in Denver, desperate and humiliated, learning that my place was wherever she decided to put me. Instead, I am visible because my work is accurate. I am valued because I can explain what I do. And she is diminished because I asked her one simple question she could not answer. Can you show me how this calculation works? That is what I took from her. Not her job. She kept her title. Not her relationships. She still has connections. What I took was something more fundamental. I took the illusion that she knew what she was doing. And in a technical field where competency is supposed to matter more than politics, that illusion was the only thing holding her reputation together. Thank you for listening to this. If you have ever had someone take credit for your work or felt invisible while someone else stood in your light, I hope this shows you that competency eventually wins. It might take time. It might require documentation and patience and perfect timing. But eventually, someone asks the people claiming expertise to prove it. And when that happens, the truth becomes undeniable. If this resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share your own story in the comments. Your experience matters, and you are not alone.